just because you saw me take my jacket off, it doesn't mean I'm going to preach to you today. But I am going to do what the preacher tells you. So everybody says, get a little closer. Everybody move a little closer.
He doesn't bite, really.
Really, I'm actually, I think, a pretty nice guy. My grandkids say I am. My kids would tell you something different.
All right, we're getting going here. Everybody good?
Well, I want to thank you all for joining me today and coming out. Certainly, we've been here several times to Topeka, and we just met another group here just a few minutes ago. So they were telling us they want me to come back here, so they're kind of jealous that I was coming here and I didn't have time to talk to them, to spend the time with them. And I'm like, I really have to get over here, the other side of town. But I appreciate you coming out in this warm weather we have today. I think Stephanie and I were looking, it was 101, so taking a lot out of you. But coming out in your busy schedule. But, you know, it's worth it for what's going on and what's happening in our state, in our country today. And so, and that's part of what's just driving me to run for governor. For those that don't know who I am, I'm just going to give you a little background information about myself. And I'm a first-generation Kansan. I've been here my entire life. And I have 4 children, 13 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. And all of my children are here inside Kansas, with the exception of one, and he and his family and his 3 children live in Texas. But other than that, all of them live here. They go to school here. They work here in the state of Kansas. So I have a true vested interest. I was the former mayor of the city of Wichita, only Democrat that's ever served 2 consecutive terms in a very red city, red state, and in the largest city in the state of Kansas. I think population there is about, you know, the last numbers we were looking at were 380, and then last night we were at an event and an expert told us it was 390. So 1,000 people that actually live there. And so the things what made me decide that I wanted to run is certainly I'm retired from the military. I started up as a private, digging foxholes, working my way up, and believing that there were new opportunities for me, and I did that. Before my 29th birthday, I left and went to officer candidate school. Went there, graduated from officer candidate school, and I was given an infantry platoon. I was given an infantry company, and then I worked on. And for those that don't know what infantry are, those are the ones that they actually send into battle to defend the country. And so my job was to teach them and to train them and to prepare them to go to defend others, but make sure that they were trained that they could come back home. And so I did that, and then I later went on, worked on brigade staff, and then worked on general staff, advising the general on what the needs were of the soldiers, the men and women that actually served the United States Armed Forces. And so I used to travel with him back and forth to the Pentagon to discuss those particular issues. I come from corporate America. I started out as a basic sheet metal assembler, and I was in a program after I got out of the military where the state paid half of it and the company paid half of it. I was taught how to do sheet metal work, and so I did the sheet metal work, and if I passed the school, then the company had an opportunity to pick me up. And so Cessna, who is now currently Textron, hired me. I went there. I was hired there, and I worked there for a number of years. And I eventually, while during my tenure I was there, I was also a member of the unions, AFL-CIO Machinist Union. And then a few years later, I became union steward of that particular company. And I went on strike a number of times. If you've ever been in manufacturing and aviation, you know we go on strike. When contract time come up, they don't want to do the right thing, and so we have to do what we have to do. And so what I did is we went on strike, and in one particular time, it was 69 days that I walked the picket line. 69 days. Wow. So I understand the importance of having labor unions and the importance of us standing up for our rights. And so I did that for a number of years, and I ended up getting laid off in 1985. And in fact, it was, to be quite frank, it was April 21st of 1985. You always remember a significant emotional event. And I was hired April 22nd of 1985, the following day, by the Boeing Company. And I went to work for them, and I walked the picket line for them. And but at that time, I went there. I was a manufacturing engineer, and what we did is we organized and we created SPIA, which is another labor union. At that point in time, when I first hired in, we were not organized. And so another gentleman with the same last name as mine, but Bob Brewer, asked me how did he actually, he's no longer in Kansas. He retired, and he's living in Colorado now. I only tell you that because I was watching the facial expression of the gentleman back here in the back. So he's living in Colorado now, but he was the rep there. He organized, and so he asked for advice, and so we kind of helped him organize that. But currently I have a son that's employed at Spirit Aerosystems, and my son is a union steward for them and for the Machinist Union. And so during that entire time, I've always been involved in making sure that individuals' rights. I started out as a community activist, and somebody just like you had a strong opinion about a lot of things. And when it wasn't going right, then I wasn't afraid to speak up and tell you that it wasn't going right. And what really drove me into getting into politics is I started out as a spokesperson for my homeowners in my community. I live in Wichita. You heard me say I grew up in Wichita, but I grew up in very humble beginnings. And I tell you humble, but if I was talking to my relatives, I'd say poor, bottom line. It was a single family household, 6 of us. I had to start working when I was 16 years old just to help take care of the family. So that tells you, my grandmother was one of them that was a big influence on my life, and tried to help raise me. And so I'm very appreciative of that. But, I started out in very humble beginnings. And so people that in low income or in humble beginnings, a lot of people try to say that they're lazy or they don't want to do things or they're not very intelligent. And in actuality, that's not true. And what I learned was if you just sit down and take the time to educate them and show them what it is that they need to do or how they need to do it, then get out of the way. They'll do the rest of the lifting. They just need to know. And so one of the things that I always did is, as a community activist, is I'd sit down with individuals. I'd help them address various different issues, explain certain things to them, whether policy decisions, help them to be able to make their lives better. And we were very successful at that. In fact, I was a big advocate for neighborhood associations. And in Wichita, we organized 130 neighborhood associations because we strongly believed that it was important that we help ourselves. But we also believed that government was supposed to be a resource to help us, to help ourselves, since they controlled all the money. And so we were successful in being able to do that. But, certainly you have some opposition. And one of the things that we had opposition with was the city of Wichita. And they were doing some things that we didn't think were right, and spending money that was supposed to have been CDGB dollars that's supposed to have been used for low income areas, and they were using it in the upper scale neighborhoods or in the 1%. And so we argued that particular case, and they told us that if we do this, the mayor's not going to like it. And they voted on it, but they agreed that we were right in what we were saying, and they agreed that I was right in what I was saying, since they sent me to go talk and speak for them. And they went ahead and voted against the community and against the people of Wichita. And so that was the start, because we said that was no longer going to happen again. And they asked me to run, so I went ahead and I ran, and I was successful in getting elected as a city council member. I did two terms there. In the middle of my second term, I ran for a second. In the middle of the second time, I already decided to run for mayor. And my community asked me to do that. And I thought to myself, I didn't know of anybody that had ever died from it, so why not try it? Because certainly we had to have somebody that was concerned about us. Because, certainly the mayor that was actually at that point in time was a former legislator here in Topeka, very conservative Republican. And Wichita is a very conservative Republican community. So the thing is that what I wanted to use was a common sense approach to talk to people, the ability to go out to meet the people and talk with them and to hear what they had to say. And so I did that, and I ran a very successful campaign. Long story short, I had some that said don't do it, and I was determined to do it. My grandmother sat down with me and talked to me about it. And she said, just don't forget where you came from and why you're doing this and who you're going to be speaking for. Don't forget about that. Don't ever forget about that. And I never did. And so I ran against him under that philosophy, and I was successful. And I ended up beating him 2-1, and nobody expected it. There was stories about it that there's no way that that can happen. The Republicans said we're turning on the Republican machine. I live in Koch Industries' backyard, and they were turning on their machine, and they couldn't stop it. It happened. And that's what happened when people speak up and say that they're ready for change. And so one of the things I did do as mayor is I gave them change. I believed that it was important to have more transparency. I believed it was important to have, for each one of you, to have a voice. That's why I created an environment where we call the First Saturday Breakfast, where I sat down and I talked with them about policy issues that were going to be affecting them and their communities. And I did that as a city council member. What they needed to know about what was going on, what was happening, connect the dots for them, and then tell them, these are the positive things, these are the bad things. This is the political activity that's going on. Tell me what you want. Once they understood it, what do you want? And they told me that. And you know, when I first started that as a city council member, other council members thought I was wasting my time. But after I started having 150 people show up for a Saturday morning breakfast that was supposed to be an hour, and then at 1 or 2 o'clock, I'm still saying, hey guys, we really have to get out of here. We have to go home. And they weren't interested in going home. They were interested in talking more about policy issues. They were learning. They were catching on. So then the other council members determined that, hey, this is something we better start doing and finding out what's going on and what's happening. Because what made it simple for me is when they say, well, no, I've got 300 phone calls that said, you know, we should go this direction. And I tell them, no, I talked to 150 people that said that is not the directions they want to go. And I talked to them physically. And if you think you have 300 phone calls, we all heard them say this before, they can't produce 300 phone calls. They can't even show you where they got 300 emails. So the thing is it allowed me to be able to hold individuals accountable that are policymakers. But the other portion I did is I turned around and created an environment where we started recording each and every one of the council meetings. When you can see what's going on and what's happening, you don't have to be at the council meeting, and you can sit in your living room, and for 7 days you're going to see that council meeting repeat and go over and over the conversation, how that individual voted. So you didn't have to rush and do it. You had plenty of time to be able to do it. You'd be amazed at how it made them behave. And it was about accountability. I wanted accountability for everything that we did, everything that they did, and make sure that they behaved themselves. And if there was a political agenda or they were working for someone else, then I wanted to be known. And that gave me my opportunity from the bench to ask that question. And I did that. Now, certainly, Americans for Prosperity, Tea Party, those individuals wanted to see me each and every meeting. They were always questioning. If they didn't have something, they'd make something up. And that's perfectly fine. But, you know, at that point in time, I didn't know what it was. I called it a lie. You know, our current president calls it fake news.
Alternative facts.
He's got it confused. Everything is. So the thing is that I had to challenge those types of things, and I had to challenge them each and every week and each and every day. But they gave me an opportunity by being that type of a mayor to be there, to talk to individuals, to be there for them, and to also represent them. Now, as we start looking at what's been going on today, we have some huge issues here in the state of Kansas. And when we start talking about how we've been doing funding, whether it be in education, whether it be healthcare, whether it's our infrastructure, you know, healthcare, those types of things have created some real issues. When we start segregating people, those are some serious issues. When we start issuing threats to individuals and trying to intimidate individuals to keep them from going to the polls, we have some serious issues here in Kansas. We have to stop those types of things. And the only way we can stop it is with real leadership. I strongly believe that we have focused for the past 50, 75 years that the structure that we have is we tax agriculture, manufacturing, and property taxes. Why is it we haven't explored looking at other opportunities that are out there? We know that we're having issues with water resources. That was something I brought to Brownback's attention, and he put the Water Authority Committee together, but they didn't do anything to fix it. We have to fix it. That's an environmental issue. We have communities in southeast Kansas that don't have water when we have drought here in Kansas. We have individuals that have plenty of water, but they want to charge you an arm and a leg to get it if you want it. We can't have that type of stuff. We still have individuals that are homeless, and individuals, it's not because of them that they're ill or they have health issues. It just happens. We're human beings. That's why things just happen to us. We can live a good life, a good, healthy life, the perfect life. And one day, something happens. We develop cancer. We could get lupus. We could get a host of different things and cause us, several weeks in the hospital, and you lose everything that you saved for. Mm-hmm. Everything. And not everyone has health care. Some individuals, they want you in companies that we have brought here, have done an injustice to us. They should have provided us with a benefit and provide us with health care, negotiated health care, but they didn't. They brought some individuals in and said you can buy from them if you want. So when you can't afford to pay them, then you don't have health care. Mm-hmm. And if you're off work a month or two, you don't have health care. And so we have to create an environment. We owe it to people to be able to make sure that every single citizen has an opportunity to have health care. Even the people that have mental disabilities deserve to have health care, and we owe it to them. I would much rather provide them with health care rather than find a cell and pay to put them in a cell and lock them up in prison someplace, because a number of people are in that position. I know of a gentleman that ended up having, and he's deceased now, but he went to jail. He spent 90 days in incarceration. It cost the city $150 a day because he stole 2 hot dogs from Quick Trip. 2 hot dogs. But he had a mental health problem. And the guy was a brilliant man. He was a brilliant engineer, electrical engineer. So we have a number of people that are out there in that same predicament that we owe them that opportunity to be able to get help. We have a number of people that are out there that are veterans that have mental health condition, and they don't have the help that they actually need, and we need to provide them with that. Certainly we have the VA that's available to them, but until you have to go through the VA system, you don't have any idea what they're going through. There becomes a point in time where it's just, these are soldiers. Well, we just do what the military has taught us to do and just go live off the land, live in a box, mm-hmm. live out mm-hmm. in the field, because it's taught us that rather than have to keep jumping through all these various different hoops just to get the help that they need. We have to provide a track where they don't have to go through these types of things. We owe it to them. These individuals have given their life. They've made a commitment. They vowed that they would defend this country. They would defend each and every one of us, and we owe it to them. We owe this to them to help them when they need help, because they were willing to protect our freedoms when we weren't willing to do. I mean, we have a man that's right now that's leading us today, and he didn't want to do it because he had bone spurs.
I was going to say, get that bone spurs.
Yeah, you said it. So the thing is there's some serious challenges that we actually have there. And as I see them, we borrowed money from transportation system. We borrowed money from education, where our children can't get an education. And all of our children deserve an opportunity to have an education. I mean, whether they're your children or my children, they deserve an opportunity to get an education, because Kansas children are not competing against Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado. They're not competing with these children there. They're competing with the rest of the world, because the quality of life and the jobs that they actually want are worldwide. And if individuals, if they go someplace and they see that opportunity is in Timbuktu, trust me, Frito-Lay and corporate America is going to Timbuktu. If they have something that they can get that's in that particular, we must make sure that our children are as equally important as public safety, our crimes in our street, that we have safe communities, that we have good streets to drive on, and certainly our children are as equally important as good economic development and growth and water. That's how important these children are, because that's our future. Mm-hmm. And if we create an environment that's balanced and we educate them, where we're spending these hundreds of millions of dollars to bring corporations and businesses here, we don't have to spend it anymore. We don't have to spend that kind of money anymore because those companies are going to come here. So right now in today's environment, all we're doing is buying somebody to come here for a temporary fix. We need long-term fix. We need to diversify what we have. I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't build a new prison, and they're having a discussion now as to whether or not they should build a new prison. Don't build a new prison. Start looking at some of these nutty laws that you put into place many years ago during the Reagan years, where you come up with zero tolerance and 3 strikes and you're out, and the list went on and on and on. So when we have individuals that were incarcerated for pot, and I think that's the most ridiculous thing that anybody can be incarcerated for. Why don't we look at it from a different perspective? We're in Kansas. We're progressive Democrats, so we see things differently, a much larger picture. And that is, why don't we look at pot and start reevaluating it? One, it has a medical purpose that we should have been using years ago as soon as we found out about it. Helping out individuals that were having seizures or various different diseases or cancer, and help them to prolong their lives or make it easier for them. Why not? That sounds too much like common sense, doesn't it? Why not go back and instead of them turning around and pulling somebody over, and one of the young people or one of these professionals or any of those individuals, instead of pulling them over and finding out that they have a marijuana seed in their car or they have a joint in their car, why not just give them a ticket if you think that that's what they need to have? But it doesn't require you to incarcerate them. It doesn't require you to give them a felony conviction. If you think it's that important, you can treat it like you do alcohol or like you do cigarettes, and you can address that issue. Don't use it during these time frames or when you're operating heavy equipment or you're driving. Why not? And let them continue their lives and let them go to work the next day and continue doing their jobs. And they address the issue that way. But the other portion is, if you look at what's happening in Colorado and other states that have decided that they were going to legalize it, they have hundreds of $millions that they can invest in. Imagine this: education. Imagine paying the teachers the necessary salaries that they need. Imagine buying all the school resources that they need to be able to invest in schools so that the children can be educated. Imagine taking those dollars and investing them in healthcare and taking care of those particular types of things. Imagine that. That's a perfect environment. Those are opportunities that we can do here in the state of Kansas to change things. And those are the opportunities that I'm supportive of. But I'm also supportive of looking at different types of industries. We start talking about, we got hemp. Hemp is not a regular marijuana. It's something that just grow wild here in the state of Kansas. But we go hundreds and hundreds of acres in northeast Kansas and things of that nature. Why not manufacture it and let's create some ropes, materials, woods, things of that nature that we can actually use. That's another industry that we can tax. Eventually we can get ourselves into a predicament where we have enough revenue that's coming in and we're in the black and we paid off capers, we've given the money back to the transportation system, we addressed the issue with education and healthcare. We've done it enough that, oh, by the way, this plan that we have in place that to get rid of taxes on food, we can implement that thing and fix it so it never has to come back again, and we start charging people for taxes on food. And I know how difficult that is. You bear in mind, I came from a single-family household, and I can remember when my mother used to try to make $3 and then ask people could they pay her in advance so that I could go to the store to get food to bring home to feed my brothers and sisters. And I had to figure out and calculate what the taxes were going to be when I was thinking, okay, I can get this, but I can't get but this one loaf of bread that's 15 cents. I mean, those are the types of things that families are going through today, and they shouldn't have to. When I was mayor, we had to turn around and calculate when I was feeding children at the Atwater Center, and we feed them in school when they weren't in school. And I have to go spend my paycheck to go buy them food so they could have food to eat because that was the only meal they were going to get for that day. Then my assistant had to figure out, okay, well, this is, we're going to have to figure this out with some tax, based on what your salary is and the number of children we have that we need to feed. I could have fed a few more children. I could have bought them a snack or something if I didn't have to pay taxes. Those are the types of things that we're dealing with here, and we have to start using some real common sense. And I think because I'm the mayor and have been a mayor of the city, I know when bad decisions have actually happened in communities and to our families and how it's affecting our homes, our communities, our families, whether it be in education, whether it be in healthcare, or whether it just be crime and safety in our schools and our homes. When you start cutting these social issues, they're going to arise. And it seems like in today's environment, that's where they're at. They don't mind cutting those particular things, and they've analyzed, is this going to affect me? And if they come to the conclusion that the answer is no, then guess what? I think that's a bad thing that they're really doing to her. But I really wish I could help, but I can't do anything right now. I don't have enough votes. And they let it happen. You never hear about them fighting it, do you? We have to have change in Kansas. We have to have bold change in Kansas. We have to have people that are angry here in Kansas. Because the few are the voice for the many. And I have traveled this entire state from northeast, south, and west, and I'm trying to tell you that there are individuals that do not see it the way that they see it. There are individuals that are not happy with what's going on. There are individuals that said in western Kansas, in these small towns in rural Kansas, said, we don't know why the governor put in a tax plan and giving us a tax break. We own a small business, but we don't mind paying our fair share. And that's what it's about. Each and every one of us paying our fair share, and instead of the 91% of us paying for everybody else. Because I can assure you, corporate America is not paying their fair share. They're getting the tax breaks, they're not paying for anything, and then they're asking for your money too. We have to start saying no. And that's where it comes with transparency. As governor, I believe that it was important to do that. I was the one that put cameras on police officers so we could see what was going on. I believe that it's important. The more transparency we have, the better off we're going to be. The more cameras we put in the Capitol where individuals can have meetings, then our state legislators will behave themselves. I know some of these guys, and I can tell you, some of them are some bad, bad people.
Hawkins?
Really bad people. And they need adult supervision, but they need oversight. And with me, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody that's going to provide the necessary oversight that's going to be there, that's needed. I will work extremely hard, and the bills that Brownback put into place, I will work very hard to overturn those bills. The things that they've actually done with individuals from the LGBT community, it will not be tolerated. Not under this administration. I am not going to tolerate it because I have seen when you open the door and you allow somebody to discriminate against one group of people, that door is open for them to come back through at a later date and discriminate against anybody else that they want to. Mm-hmm. And why not? The door is open. Well, we did it against this group. It's not going to happen. I'm going to make sure that those doors are locked, sealed shut, and we're not going that direction, ever. And if I see that it's going on, you're going to be the first one. We'll be talking about it. I'll tell the people that I work for what's going on and what's happening. And when I see something like that going on, because we've seen it, we saw it 50 years ago. We saw it 80 years ago. We're not going to let history repeat itself, not here in Kansas, and not under my administration. But the other portion I can guarantee you is the person that I selected as my running mate, Chris Morrow. It's not going to happen under him either. And that was why he was chosen, because he's a former mayor, he's passionate, he has the same values that I have, and he wants to make sure that everyone has fair representation. And not only that, I could very easily ask you, until the current governor became governor, did you really see him in your communities, in your neighborhoods? I can ask you that question because I already know what the answer is. No.
That's right.
But what I'll tell you is Chris Morrow and Carl Brewer you see in your neighborhood. Because you know why? Because we know what it's like to be in your shoes. And the only way that you can get a true understanding true understanding is by going out, getting with you, walking in your shoes, but then sitting down and talking to you. Talking to you and being patient and listening. Sometimes we have a hard time communicating as to what we're trying, the point we're trying to make. But you don't leave until both of you have a clear understanding of what your concern is. And that's what you're going to get with Carl Brewer and Chris Morrow. We're more hands-on. We've already been there. We're not afraid. But we also recognize that we work for you. And I know that there are a lot of individuals that are saying, making promises today, and saying they're going to do some fabulous things. They're going to save the world. They're going to help us out. But the thing is, are they listening to you? And the things that they think they're going to help you out with, are those the things that you want? You don't need somebody telling you what you want. You need somebody helping you with the things that you need that are out there. Mm-hmm. That's what has to happen. You have to have somebody that's going to provide you with true representation. With Carl Brewer and Chris Morrow, that's what you're going to get. And I'll also tell you one other thing. If it's depending on me, and I can influence it in any way. You heard me say I was an armor officer. I was an infantry officer. I taught soldiers to go to combat. I know about weapons. If you teachers, are there any teachers in here? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not carrying a weapon. No. I want you teaching. That's what I want. You're not carrying a weapon, because I am not going to allow that to happen. Not in the state of Kansas. I don't care if Trump says it, and I don't care if anyone else. I will turn around. I will fight that. I've got children, and I know that I want you teaching children. I want you doing the things that you love to do, and taking care of children, because you're the one that's going to be with our children, my children, for the largest part of the day, and you're the biggest influence, and that's where I want your concentrations at. And I'm going to provide you with all the resources you need for you to do the job, and I'm going to provide you with adequate pay. I know that's crazy, and I don't want you spending your money on my children anymore. Okay? I only want you doing one job, so we're going to make sure you get paid adequately. And so those are the things that are passionate to me. But the only way that's going to happen is we have to bring in new leadership, compassionate leadership, and it has to be somebody that's proven that they can actually lead. I did it in the largest city, in the worst economic time during the recession in the state of Kansas. I also was president of the Kansas League of Municipalities. And I served in the military. I was a leader there in the military. I have the executive experience. I come from corporate America. I know what corporate companies want. Yes.
Can you talk to us about how your plan, specifically how to fix the Medicaid CanCare program? I think a lot of people in Kansas, healthcare is like top on their list of issues.
It's top on not only in rural Kansas, but also in urban Kansas. And so certainly, the one thing, as you know, in the state of Kansas, Brownback turned back about $2.7 billion because he didn't like Obama. And so you're not going to hear me, that's not going to happen here, not with me. But we don't have that opportunity anymore. We've lost that opportunity, it's gone. And so we're going to have to do some things differently. And a lot of it has to do with the tax structure we have. We're not talking about doing tax increases or anything of that nature, but being smart about how we actually use the taxes. Come up with a plan that we actually need. How much is it that we actually need to be able to address that issue, and then implement it and put it into place. And so certainly if we start diversifying, if we start legalizing cannabis and those particular things, using those tax dollars and putting them aside to address health care. And it's also in taking those dollars and investing in education. We have to figure out exactly what the exact dollar figure is that we need to use as far as education is concerned. And we allocate those dollars. We have to establish an overall 10-year plan, but I need to show you how that 10-year plan is actually going to fall into place and how much revenue we're going to need during certain points, and are we making progress? And I'm not saying wait year to year and tell you whether or not we're making progress. It should be more like every 90 days, are we making progress or are we behind, so that you can follow and you can track exactly what's going on. So we have to do the exact same thing with healthcare, exactly how many dollars we actually need, and the progress that we're actually making in being able to get there. Yes.
What are your plans to deal with the IDD waiver through home and community-based services? It's the Intellectuals with Developmental Disabilities waiver. Back in the when Brownback had a brainchild, and he decided that that needed to be put in can care. And ever since then, families like mine have had a huge hurdle mountain put in front of us that we didn't need. So, and I mean, you can see I've got like a stack of papers here that I've done research on with the Can Care Oversight Committee. And I've also come to the realization that the people that are currently on the Oversight Committee aren't going to do anything for the people like us that are on Medicaid, that are in the disability waiver, because they are all being paid for. Their campaigns are being funded by the insurance companies within Can Care. So how are you going to fix that problem and not only fix the problem with the IDD HCBS issue, but also make sure that there's not a conflict of interest when there's people on committees that are supposed to oversight the insurance companies, but they're taking money from the insurance companies that they're charged oversight on.
Mm-hmm. To address that particular issue, as you know, we have that organization in Wichita, and for years I've heard complaints and concerns. The first thing we need to do is get individuals that are trained working, but I'm not opposed that if Can Care, we're not giving them government oversight, which they should be receiving. Anybody that's receiving any type of tax dollars, your money, we should providing them with some oversight and someone else that's looking at what's going on, what's happening, and someone looking at them internally. And so I can't tell you that Can Care is the right solution in being able to address that issue with individuals with disabilities, and that we may need to create another organization that has true professionals and trained and skilled workers to be able to address your needs. Because I know a number of people that have, in Wichita, that have actually been diagnosed as bipolar or some other diagnosis, and then something happens and they send them where they have to get other medical treatment, and they find out that that's not what they were misdiagnosed, but they were able to diagnose them in just a couple of hours. And so that's something that we have to address that issue, but we need to bring those types of things in. I'm always concerned about the private sector that we have, that Brownback sent out, where the private sector is managing certain things, whether it be our senior citizens, whether it be our children, or whether it be individuals that have broken the law. I'm always concerned about those types of things, because it's a business. It's a business, and they must make money, and they must have people in beds. I would have said something else, but they've got to have people in the beds. And so they make as many people as they keep in beds, then that's how they're going to actually make their dollars. And so we have to have some oversight, and some of those things we have to bring them back inside. And that way you have state oversight, and then not only that we have individuals that are skilled, that are trained professionals that are actually doing it. But I tell you, one of the other unique things that I strongly believe in is citizen advisory committees. Ooh. As governor, I did it when I was mayor, and I'll certainly do it as governor. And my running mate believes the same thing. If we create citizen advisory committees, like individuals like yourselves that are sitting on committees, that your eyes and ears are going to be better than the legislators that are in there making policy decisions and telling us that this is what they said they wanted. You're going to have that access to be able to have that, and we're going to have those citizen advisory committees, and they're going to meet on a regular basis. And we'll be meeting with them on a regular basis and sitting down and talking with them. What are the issues and what are the concerns? What about these policy issues that they're looking at? How is this going to affect you and your communities? How is this going to affect your households? How is it going to affect your schools? Those are the types of things that I'm fond of, and I believe that other individuals are fond of them. You know, the reason we have so many young people that are running for office is because I created an environment that gave them an opportunity to have a voice on policy issues. And so I will have a citizen advisory committee that has to do with young people. What are they wanting? Because one of the things we do know is they think differently and individuals that might be my age, but others in other cities, other states, come to where they're at if they see that there's a new opportunity for them there. Yes, ma'am.
I love that you started out saying that you're from humble beginnings, because I think it takes, in today's world especially, maybe in our grandparents' lifetime, somebody to know the struggles to try to get through this world, how hard it is. Some people kind of born into the middle class. There's a lot of people that have had a struggle from the bottom up, and they understand the struggles that still exist in this state. We just came out in the top 10 for suicides in this nation. Kansas did. Do you have any, what can we do about that? You're saying we can start growing cannabis to help pay for medical stuff, or maybe even provide low-income housing, safe housing for homeless and the poor, because I think that's where a lot of the suicides come from, is from people just trying to struggle. And mental health not being as available as it was at one time. We don't have a state hospital anymore. Minigers is gone.
Well, I can't tell you why people commit suicide. And yes, some of it has to do with drugs. Some of it has to do with depression. And but it's not, socially it's not one of those, because I do know a couple of people that were probably wealthy and they committed suicide. They find various different reasons. But the thing is that in a lot of cases, we see signs. And we need to be aware of those particular signs. And we need to have someplace that we can, or someone that we can talk to that tell us, okay, you can report this individual, we're concerned about this. And the professionals start looking into it and finding out what they can actually do themselves to address the issue of individuals that could be possibly suicidal. And then a lot of it has to do with additional stress that they may have. You know, a lot of young people are under a lot of stress, whether it be bullying or it's in school, not being accepted. The list goes on and on and on as to what can actually cause these individuals and these young kids to do that. And so we have to create an environment that there's someone that's there to give them help. And some of that has to do, when you talk about schools and colleges, it's having adequate counselors that are there on site that can help them, and locations that they can go get it. And so a lot of those are things we can actually address them, but we have to make it a priority and recognize it.
Do you feel like it's a lot of the younger people where the suicide numbers are coming from?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say it's younger.
I think it's from a lack of not having the availability of services like we used to here.
Well, we certainly don't have it. We don't have it here. We don't have the services that we had to address the issues of domestic violence. Yeah. And I have seen a number of people and a number of women that have lost their lives because of domestic violence here in the state of Kansas, and even inside my community. You know, we have changed, and we don't have any place where we used to be, where a mother could take her children and she could run and she could go someplace, and there would be people that take her in. You know, right now, if it's not a particular church, then you can't get in, and if they're full, they won't take you. We have to have something that's in place to be able to address that. And a lot of it is just creating that environment that there are some priorities and some things that are in place that says, you know, we don't want anything happening to you. You are a priority to us. We're concerned, and you can go here. We've got to also give emphasis on our children. Number of children that have lost their lives here recently. You know, you don't have to do anything to them. If you just get sick of them, take them to the fire station and drop them off, and then we'll come pick them up. Mm-hmm. That's where we have to get back to, and we have lost that.
Well, in the court systems in Kansas, I went through this for a number of years with a family member, and we were told by attorneys not to mention if you're a woman that you're abused in the home, because the judge would rule against you. Mm-hmm. And I heard that 2 counties in Kansas were receptive to supporting domestic violence against women in courts. One was Shawnee County, I think the other one was Wyandotte County.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've heard this from attorneys in different counties and stuff, and I'm appalled that there's judges that sit on a bench and don't want to know that this woman's been abused and that's why she wants to leave. Instead, they're being told, don't bring up the domestic violence in court.
Well, see, and that's part of the issue when we talk about children, or you're talking about senior citizens, or you're talking about wives and families that are being abused. That's one of the things that that we have to come up with a firm process of what people can do to be able to assist them and to be able to help them. But we also have to come up with a process in being able to help them. I mean, people know what's going on and people know what's happening, and but people have a tendency to think for themselves and, well, this doesn't involve me, so I'll just not get involved. You have to get involved, because anytime we lose a life, and I've learned as mayor, I've lost so many lives that each and every one of them have affected me my entire life. And I'm passionate about those types of things, that individuals need to be provided safety. So we have to create that type of environment to provide them with the safety. We used to have those types in place years ago when Kathleen Sebelius was governor, but certainly they've gotten rid of it because they put it at lower priority, and when we need to cut funding, those are the things we cut funding on. We need to put those funding things back in place. And we need to pay for them, and we need to spend the time to educate everybody on what's important.
Can I ask you?
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about how you make change happen in the government itself. It's very possible you could be walking into very low morale within the departments in the government system right now. And how do you come in front of those people and say, we're going to make this better for you? Personally, I feel like we're just 10 years out of the Great Recession. We're just starting to really see raises happen again. People have been sitting there for 10, 15 years, and they haven't moved up. There's nowhere to go. They've seen people be cut. They've seen half of departments go. How do you bring that change in, and how do you bring that morale up?
Well, first of all, your change has to start at the very top. And I'll tell you, when I was in the military, and the first thing they gave me was, they asked me to take over this infantry company that had low morale and they had low scores. And so the first thing that I did is I walked in, and everyone in leadership said, this is the direction we want to go. Is there anybody that don't think that we can get there and don't think that they want to go? Now is your time to step up, and you can lead. And if they don't want to, then you lay out what the plan is. But it starts at the very top. It starts with all of the leadership, the governor, lieutenant governor, and everyone that's assigned to him. That's where it starts. And they must have high morale. But they must be engaging, and they must have a strategy and a plan for upward mobility, succession plans, so that individuals have something that they can work toward. And then, what the most difficult thing is? Getting rid of the non-performers. Getting rid of non-performers. Now, I'm not going to allow you to get rid of somebody because they are members of the LGBTQ community. But if you're a non-performer and you're not performing for the people that I work for, which is each and every one of you, guess what? It's time for you to go find some more employment someplace else. And it's not about friendship. It's not about any of those types of things. It's, are you delivering those services, and you delivering it with a smile? I've seen environments in government where they are friendly, they're kind, they're courteous to me. Stephanie and I were just talking about that on the way here. And when they didn't know it was me on the phone, they were nasty. We're not going to have that. They're going to treat you with respect. The Capitol and the state will be a reflection of you, and they'll be working for you, and they'll demonstrate that they're working for you. Not all of them are bad, but we do have some people that are bad, and we have a bunch of people that are incompetent, and we're going to fix those. Yes, sir.
Primary elections are only a couple months away, and just among us folks here, could you talk a little bit about what you see as the issues in that particular election? Because that's the first one that's coming up.
Well, certainly education and healthcare will be the issues in that election. And, and you're talking about for the primary, you're going to have individuals that we come from different walks of life. And you're going to have to make the decision as to, out of the three, which one do you want? And there's actually 5. which one do you want, that you believe clearly understand the things that you want. And it's not an issue of whether you like a particular person. It's which one do you think can provide you with the leadership and sustain what you're wanting. You're looking at which one can actually go across party lines, that can get Democrats, Republicans, and Independents to work collectively together. Which one has a proven track record of being able to do it? You're going to have to make those decisions, and I think that those are going to be some of the defining things. But the other portion I think is it's going to be out there is, out of all the candidates, which one will bring inclusion? And when I say inclusion, bring everybody to the table, give them an opportunity to have a voice, allow them to have representation, and include them, but also stand with them. And they're going to have to make that determination. And so certainly, I only see, one candidate. Certainly I would say that because I've already experienced that from the largest city and have a track record of doing that. But the others are going to have to prove that they can do it. I have the executive experience, I have the leadership experience, and I have the commitment that I can bring, and have clearly demonstrated that I can bring Republicans and Democrats and Independents together to focus on issues that affect our communities and our families and our children and our seniors, and the others have not. And I also recognize that it's important, somebody's going to have to be able to communicate when the policy decisions are made, that they can come back and look you in the eyes and say, these are the policy decisions I made, and this is why I made that decision. The easy portion is making it and voting on it, and then getting quiet and not having to answer to it. That's not what you're going to see here. I figure I work for you, and if I do something bad, then I expect you to call me here in this building here. And like I saw one lady in Johnson County, or Wyandotte County, she told me she'd take me behind the barn and give me a paddling. I expect you to call me here and give me a paddling. Yes, ma'am.
Have you done any polling, or do you have any reason to believe that you can carry Western Kansas? I mean, Josh thinks he can carry Western Kansas. Do you feel that way too? And what do you have that would make them turn?
I have actually been there to see them, but I also know that they say Democrats don't come there. But certainly, if I go into the town, everybody in town know that I'm there. Because I started one end and I walked to the other end, and I'm pretty sure that I'm the only person that looked like me.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I can clear the air with you on that.
You're coming into the picture, right?
Exactly. And so I go there and I visit with them. I go to their community centers. I go to every single building. I've been to their city halls. I've been to their hardware stores. I go to their community centers. I visit with them. I go to their care homes. I visit with them. I even have visited with some of the people that just drove by. And of course, I didn't yell for them to stop, but they stopped. And got out of their pickup trucks. And they had a conversation with me. And so I've had that opportunity to visit with them, and they say, well, you want this, these are the things I want. I want safe communities. I want health care. I don't want to have to travel 100 miles to get health care. I want my children to get education. I mean, they keep going on. I said, well, you're asking for the same things that me as a Democrat want. I let them say, well, it's not that much difference between us. You're right. But I can provide you those things because I did it in Wichita, which is a very conservative community. And then I asked them, so why are you a Republican? They say, well, my grandfather was, and my father was, so I figured that this is the way we're supposed to be. That's how I know that not all of them are going that direction. And not only that, when you talk about Western Kansas, we know that anytime that during the time frame that I was the mayor of Wichita, or I was on the news addressing any particular issue, that the media and the news and the television all broadcast to Western Kansas. So when I arrived, they knew who I was. And there was a lot of places we went. They said, oh, we know who you are. When I introduced myself, oh, we know who you are. we used to watch you on the news all the time, or we used to watch you on television all the time. So they know who I am, but they know my views on various different issues. The other thing I'll tell you about Western Kansas is we all assume that you don't ever bring up the issue of AR-15s to them because they're supportive of them. They're not. I've had them tell me, we don't need those. We can use these types of weapons, and they can start naming off the different types of weapons. If we need to use it for hunting, we can get it. And I tell them, I'm impressed. I'm a hunter also. And so I'm impressed that they don't think that they need AR-15s, and we shouldn't have them. And I strongly believe in a certain amount of gun control. I don't think everybody should have the opportunity to just carry whatever they want. We can't do it with a 50 caliber machine gun, so why not put AR-15 in the same category as that? They have to have a federal firearms license to do it. Any other questions? George?
Yes, sir.
You have a question?
No, I'm good.
That's what I like.
I wanted to mention during the suicide conversation that I think a lot of it has to do with healthcare and needing to expand healthcare.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that reach out. They go to an emergency room. They get a quick fix Band-Aid, and then they're told to go see a therapist or something. And if they don't have insurance, they can't do that. So they go home and end up suffering. And so they've
Exactly
reached
correct.
out, and they have nowhere to go after they go to the ER.
One last question, anyone?
Yes. Yeah, to tag on to that, I work at Jardine Elementary School of 750 children, and there's 2 counselors in the building. We have kids that are actually mentally ill by physician diagnosis that really, if they do go to the facility to be in, get an inpatient, diagnosis and care, they're there for like 2 days, they're given pills. Parents can't afford the pills. These are the things. The pills are like, whatever, $50, it could be as much as $300 a month, which to them is maybe half of their salary, a lot of these people. And so it's a vicious cycle. Not only do they need, a lot of times they need therapists to talk to, like the old days, like at Menninger and State Hospital, and to a degree at Stormontville West. And that's not happening anymore because it's all, I hope I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but it's about Big Farm. And let's give everybody a pill for something, and that's going to fix it, whether it's cancer or whatever. It's I think there needs to be some other. There's a lot of needs in schools other than 2 counselors, and a lot of times they're not even working with the kids. They're giving these little classes, and I don't know. I think that there needs to be a lot of work in that area with family, because the kid is a product of the society and of the family situation. You can't really work with a child if you can't work with the family, and some of that goes back to poverty.
And that's true. And that's one of the things that I see, that we have to have individuals that are trained to be able to do that, have the appropriate. I have a niece who's a counselor, and she's a psychological counselor for the schools. And she has 4 schools she has to handle a day. And so, and that's an awful lot. And there are a lot of children that we have here in Kansas that need a lot of help. In one of those schools, it's not just those schools in low-income areas. One of the schools that she has is on the far south end of Wichita, in another city, more affluent school. And just because they have money doesn't mean that they don't have issues and problems at home.
Jardine's not
So,
in a poverty area.
She has a host of those. So, and not to mention the fact, those that, not everyone's as fortunate as I am. And, to maybe not need a counselor. You heard me say maybe. My mother might have a different opinion. So the thing is that we need to be able to address those issues, and maybe we need to get the total number, the right number of counselors, and that comes with the right funding for the schools as to what we actually need to be able to educate them to address those issues, but also to make sure that they have the right people and counselors that are there in place to be able to counsel. I know we have a number of leadership in the schools, a number that you certainly didn't have when I was going to school. We didn't have 3 and 4 principals in the school. And so, but we had a number of counselors in the school. I went to school in Wichita, so. So we didn't have that. We had a principal and an assistant principal, and that was it. And
We still have that.
we had a number of counselors. Now some of them have a number of assistant principals.
Not
So,
Topeka.
so we need to create, the necessary resources that we actually have there to be able to do it. But taking it a step farther, I don't believe we have to have guns in schools. I don't believe teachers in guns. But if we have to have, safety, then we have to go back and we must revisit the school resource officers, but make sure that they're trained and they're prepared school resource officers. One, to defend the schools, but then secondly, establish a relationship with children where these young people feel comfortable enough that they can go up to officer, whatever his name is, and say, one of my classmates, Stephanie, is really having issues, or she's having issues at home, or she's having issues in classroom, or she's being bullied, and they can tell them. And then once they tell them, then that officer's responsibility is start looking into it and check on the student, Stephanie, and be able to help Stephanie out and find out what's going on, whether it's there or whether it's at home. So we have to go back and we have to start getting those individuals coming back into the system there. Yes?
I know somebody said one last question, but I apologize if I missed this, but can you talk to me a little bit about due process, right to work, and then as far as education and the teacher's ability to be able to negotiate a little bit better? I've been to a couple of school districts now that the superintendent is quoted as saying that a teacher of 25 years at $62,000 of annual salary is far too much, and they can't seem to get a good faith contract. So because of that, I'm wondering how far are you willing to go as far as getting rid of right to work and allowing teachers to be able to exercise their ability to organize and possibly strike, and we just got to do that.
Well, as you know, I come from corporate America, and I know what their plan and their strategy is having to do with labor unions. And I can assure you, I have a large family that come from corporate America, and they work in labor unions and they work in those big things. And so, this right to work, we've got to move as far away from that as we possibly can, and we've got to create a wide gray line away from it, because of the fact that in corporate America they're moving more and more, because the ideal situation, and I've been in the boardroom, so the conversation is the ideal situation for them is that we not have any labor unions in the state of Kansas, and they can do whatever they choose to do, and it's whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, and they don't have to have a reason to terminate you. And in Kansas, legally, my brother-in-law is a workman's comp attorney, and my wife is his secretary and his business manager, and it's not fair. I mean, you really don't understand what they're already heading down the path of saying that you are expendable. They can work you like a mule, and your back can go out, your knees can go out. Those are the things that normally keep us going, and they only have to pay you X number of thousands of dollars, and it's not very much. A lot of times it's not even enough to cover the medical expense. We have to get rid of that, and we've got to get rid of those caps that they put into place. So I support creating an environment where labor unions can represent the individuals, and certainly put things in place where they just can't terminate you just because they choose to. We've got to protect individuals. We've got to protect workers, because you are not expendable. And we have to send a strong message that you're not. And, oh, by the way, we know that you're not the company from the 1950s that was moved here so that you wanted to be here because we were good, outstanding citizens. You moved here because you were here to make a profit.
Okay. Thank you, Carl.
So thank you guys so very much. Look for new leadership. Things heading in the right direction. Get this state back on track. I need your support. I need your help so that we can move this entire state in the right direction. So I encourage you to go to brewerforkansas.com And you can follow myself and Chris Morrow as we are traveling around the entire state. I'm here today. He's over in some other city. But the same work that you see us doing today is the same work that you'll see once we become governor. We work for you, not you for us.
And they're on Twitter too.
Yes, we are on Twitter.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Want to grab him real quick and get that question answered?
Are you still live?
Yeah.
Oh, Carl, I don't know if you want to answer this real quick. It says,
Yes, what is that?
ask him about fathers' rights and what he would do about making changes to the recommendation that the state guidelines follow.
Well, certainly that, I'm sure this person asks this question because he knows that that's been a big issue. My son has been issuing that's personal. And but the thing is I believe that it's important that fathers have those rights and that we create an environment where children can be protected by biological fathers and mothers. And so making sure that we put a process in place where individuals can file complaint and there's a follow-through. And they're not just ignored by the court or not just ignored by DCF or law enforcement.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.